54% of employees have admitted to going rogue with unauthorized purchases on their company corporate card. And 66% of companies admit to having reimbursed out-of-policy spend, according to a recent Rippling Spend survey, which you can download for free in the description. That means your company's hard-earned money and closely guarded budget are being spent on personal shiny watches, eyelash extensions, and a hang glider. These are real expenses, and the last two were actually approved. As always on Spend Setters, I found an expert to figure out how you can stop this. Here are 6 actionable steps or pillars to build an enforceable expense policy that keeps employee spend in check, created by none other than Vipin Sethi. Vipin has 12 years of experience as an audit director at PwC, helping tech and marketplace companies go from private to IPO. He's now the controller at Rippling, one of the fastest growing yet frugal companies in the world, where Vipin's team manages millions of dollars in monthly spend. In this video, he'll explain how to reduce wasteful spending, catch outliers sooner, and even reduce admin work as a result. Pillar number 1 is to identify a strategic purpose. First, Vipin suggests that we should zoom out and recognize that expense policy can do more than just cut costs. It's also a strategic lever that can directly support critical business objectives. Expense policy can be both tightened or loosened. For example, prohibiting spend with a certain manufacturer because they keep sending faulty parts, or making your marketing expense policy a little bit looser so that growth teams can experiment more aggressively without being bogged down by corporate policy.
Let's say we have big objective of the business to move down market with client base. This could mean, I think, working with a strategic finance team to deliberately loosen expenses around certain type of advertising and allow marketing department to use like different methods of effectively reaching out to those customers and segments. So identify these objectives where you can use expense policy more creatively and effectively and just align on the action plan for those.
To validate the effectiveness of new policy, you must track relevant metrics. In Vipin's marketing expense example, that might be revenue growth from a specific channel. Here's Vipin again explaining how it can be more strategic and holistic in your approach to expense policy.
Take some action and actually make this happen. Finance team should collaborate with leadership and executives. So get your executives like strategic finance, marketing leads, R&D leads, and HR, I think, in a room to see if your expense policy can be customized to better support your current needs.
Now we're on pillar number 2, maintain clarity and consistency.
Clarity and consistency is definitely an undervalued area of expense policy. And the main is that most of the administrative burden, like around reimbursement, come from confusion. So either people didn't know what's in policy or out of policy, or a lot of times I think finance teams are just trying to verify expenses using like those old policy handbooks that are riddled with gray area. So it's not clear. Clarity and consistency in your expense policy does help like avoid confusion. Also removing like gray areas for employee judgment and also like reduces out of policy expenses. So just why you need this pillar.
To do this, first create clearly outlined authorized versus unauthorized transactions. Second, put this document into an easy to find place, like a Confluence or even a Google Doc. And third, make sure to enforce the same expense policy across all types of company spend. Vipin says to make it so clear that you should use green and red boxes if you have to, and definitely include examples.
It's written in a very simple way, and it includes examples to make it more real for employees. I think, for instance, we clearly state that employees must select the lowest cost of service available when booking rideshare. So our relevant example is that employees should only use Uber X, not Uber Black.
Clarity and consistency will save you tons of headache. Pillar number 3 is proactively enforce it. Vipin says the best time to stop rogue spend is before it happens.
It's much easier to be preventative than leaving room for like clawing back reimbursement from employees, and also like having those conversations with employee about their expenses. Like focus here is to reduce both unauthorized spending and implementing solutions like automating to prevent administrative tasks becoming overwhelming. This not only frees up like time with finance people to focus more on their difficult, challenging part of their job, but also like streamlines operations and processes, potentially like allowing team to operate with like a fewer staff and also like reducing their own department expenses. This sounds pretty like intuitive, but sometimes like people, they forget, I think, and they lose sight of how they can be proactive and enforcing policies.
Not only is it harder to reverse bad transactions, but by not being proactive, there's a higher volume of transactions for your team to comb through.
Truly the best way to be proactive is to use tech-enabled corporate cards. I guess 52% of our like audience here is in that bucket. They get automatically locked out of policy transactions in real time. time. So you don't have to worry about like looking at individual transaction and checking the box. But this option actually brings your expense policy handbook into real world. And I think it definitely reduces like a lot of manual work you do today.
With tech-enabled corporate cards from Rippling, you can even set custom restrictions on purchase types and individual card spending limits based on employee role and department. But even if you don't have tech-enabled corporate cards, Vipin has a framework. You can simply align individual corporate card limits with departmental budgets. Issue corporate cards with preset limits for specific teams or projects or departments and have everyone in those groups use that card. This basic trick can help avoid overspending. And if your spend management is completely manual, then you can do it the old-fashioned way. Proactively communicating with teams on upcoming budgets, like the per diems for an upcoming field event, can be surprisingly more effective than you'd expect. Pillar number 4, build with granularity. One-size-fits-all expense policies don't work. What works for an engineer is not going to work for a sales director. Granularity means expense policies should be tailored to the needs of employees and the business so you can more effectively direct and control spend. One example is granular approval workflows.
Like routing approvals to like specific department heads or direct managers based on expense amount, rather than everything go to like accounting person or a controller or a director in accounting. It will help in decentralizing and also like reduces a lot of admin work.
As an added bonus, it also makes employees more mindful with their spending. And here's a real world example of that. Honeylove implemented customized and automated approval processes that routed expenses to department heads. And this actually reduced rogue spending from employees because they knew their expenses were going to their manager and not someone in accounting with zero context. You should create expense policies and approval workflows based on dollar amounts and employee attributes like role, level, department, tenure, and location. You could even consider some more specific but higher frequency scenarios that could benefit from a more explicit expense policy. Pillar number 5, demand real-time visibility. Here's why real-time visibility is so important in Vipin's words.
One of the highest impact upgrades for your enforcing your policy. And then the main reason is because more frequently you can refresh your data, better you can catch outliers and identify all these mistakes like mismatch and duplicate transactions. And also the biggest thing for us as a controller and accounting person is like streamlining our month-end close. Time saved is potentially time and money, and then headcount save as well.
A strong expense policy catches outliers, identifies mismatches and duplicates, and makes the overall finance function more efficient. Real-time visibility improves all of these.
Tech-enabled corporate cards, the best way to do it. I think it gives you real-time data directly into your dashboard. And also like this reduces like your closing times of books. But no matter what, I think spend management solution you use, I think consolidation of any software that your finance team pulls data from is definitely the way to improve the speed, setup time, and accuracy of your close.
With more legacy or manual solutions, you can still build dashboards or spreadsheets with refreshable data sets. Although it can be difficult to stitch together so many different data sources. Still, try and refresh this data at least once a week, definitely at least once a month, because as Vipin says, this will help you stay ahead of the curve for the month-end close. Vipin's advice is loud and clear. Consolidate your finance tools to improve the connected nature and data quality so you can push toward real-time visibility. As another real-world example of this, a company called Andros consolidated their finance stack and got real-time data. And their month-end close went from 10 to just 3 days. And they saved $100,000 per year in licensing fees and SaaS costs through this consolidation. Pillar number 6, continuously refine infrastructure. This pillar is often the difference between a finance team that can scale and one that gets bogged down by its systems. Company budgets and priorities change, so teams should refresh both their expense policy and the infrastructure it's built upon to follow suit. This can yield increased efficiencies and free up your finance team to do things that are actually more strategic rather than conducting admin work.
It's no different than any other area, like where you always think of investing in a better technology or better solution. I think it's the same thing. You need to treat expenses, and in the same way, you always look for like better technology and solutions to help reduce all the admin burden and enforce your policies in a better way.
Vipin explains how he does this.
Create a cadence for retrospectives, I think, just to analyze where they can improve their processes. I think more often than not, I think this comes in form of like automations and also like just like improving your like dashboard views. And calling back to pillar 1 here, I think finance teams should also meet with leadership and executives to make sure that policies are still in line with their overall strategies. Not like you just decide one time and I think you forget about it. You need to like constantly review that cycle and go back to like your main goals and objectives of the business.
In Vipin's case, he said Rippling conducts quarterly meetings to realign on OKRs related to spend management, and they also survey the employees to see how their experience has been with the current expense policy infrastructure. Vipin mentions this is another critical part of continuous refinement. A company company called Emotive identified reimbursements as a time suck for their team, so they refined their system to include automated reimbursements, and now they reduced the time spent on that task by 75%. Now it's time for the action audit. In the next 30 seconds, I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do starting tomorrow to implement what you just learned. First is meetings. Set up meetings with leadership to see if expense policy is being used the right way. Second, revisit your expense policy field guide if you haven't already. Is it hidden away where no one can find it, or is it easy to access? Is it clearly written with black and white, unauthorized and authorized examples? If not, you have some work to do. And third, finally, conduct a health check on your current expense policy infrastructure. What part of it can be automated? What part of it can be consolidated? What part of it can be shifted to be more real time? And what can be replaced? If you want this entire video turned into a checklist format for you to use, we've actually done that and put it in the description below for you to download for free. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.